Crime is a subject that affects us all, and it's important to understand the root causes and consequences of criminal behavior, especially when it comes to young people. In this video, we'll dive deep into the world of teenage crime, exploring the reasons behind it, its impact on individuals and society. Get ready to watch real-life experiences and these 10 most evil teenage criminals. Let's get started. This is Crime Flicks, your #1 stop for crime stories. Before we get into the video, subscribe to Crime Flicks to help us bring you the best crime content. Thank you. We start with number 10, Carol Ann Fugate. It all started in 1958 when Carol Ann Fugate's boyfriend, Charles Starkweather, went on a rampage that would ultimately claim the lives of 11 people. Fugate was by his side every step of the way, and together they terrorized the Midwestern United States. Fugate, dressed in a simple black dress, sat stoically at the defense table, her eyes fixed on the judge as he read the verdict. The judge pronounced Fugate guilty of aiding and abetting her boyfriend. The spectators gasped in horror as the judge sentenced Fugate to life in prison despite her age of just 14. Fugate remained motionless, her expression unchanged as she was led away to begin her sentence. But what led Fugate to become involved in such heinous crimes? Some say she was just a naive young girl in the wrong place at the wrong time. Others argue that she was a willing accomplice who enjoyed the thrill of the kill. Number 9, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb. Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, both just 19 years old at the time, hatched a plan to commit the perfect crime, believing themselves to be above the law. They kidnapped and murdered a young boy named Bobby Franks just for the thrill, hoping to demonstrate their intellectual superiority by getting away with the crime. The two were apprehended by police soon after the murder. Despite the overwhelming evidence against them, Leopold and Loeb pleaded not guilty, claiming they were not responsible for their actions due to their privileged upbringing and superior intelligence. Their defense team argued they were victims of circumstance and should not be sentenced to death. The judge, however, was unmoved, and both young men were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Many could not believe that two young men from such privileged backgrounds could be capable of such heinous crimes. Number 8, Michael Carneil. The year was 1997, and the small town of Paducah, Kentucky, was left reeling after one of the most alarming cases in American history. On that day, Michael Carneil, a 14-year-old student at Heath High School, entered the school's prayer group armed with a gun and opened fire. In just a few minutes, Carneil had killed 3 students and injured 5 others. The senseless act of violence sent shockwaves throughout the community and the nation. As the trial began, it became clear that Carneil was not a typical teenage defendant. He exhibited zero remorse for his actions and even seemed to revel in the attention he was receiving from the media. Despite his youth, the prosecution presented a case that was both damning and heartbreaking, showing how this young man had planned the attack for weeks and had even gone so far as to study previous school shootings to hone his skills. Ultimately, the judge handed down a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. But recently, 25 years after the devastating incident, Carneil appeared in front of the board stating that voices in his head were the reason behind his actions. Number 7, Lyle and Eric Menendez. In August of 1989, wealthy Beverly Hills couple Jose and Kitty Menendez were brutally murdered in their home. The case would eventually lead to the arrest and trial of their sons, Lyle and Eric Menendez, who were just 21 and 18 years old at the time of the crime. The prosecution argued that the brothers had committed the murders to inherit their parents' considerable fortune. They presented a compelling case detailing how the brothers had carefully planned the crime, even going so far as to purchase new shotguns just days before the murders. During the trial, the Menendez brothers' defense attorneys argued that their clients had been driven to commit the murders due to years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse by their parents. The defense painted a picture of a dysfunctional family, with the Menendez brothers' father, Jose Menendez, being an oppressive and abusive figure who controlled every aspect of the family's life. They presented evidence that the brothers suffered years of sexual abuse by their father, and that their mother, Kitty Menendez, had turned a blind eye to the abuse and had even participated in it herself. Despite their claims of innocence, the jury ultimately found the Menendez brothers guilty of the murders. Number 6. Robert Thompson and John Venables. In 1993, at just 10 years old, James Bulger was abducted from a shopping center in Merseyside, England, by two 10-year-old boys, Robert Thompson and John Venables. The two boys then took Bulger to a remote location where they subjected him to hours of torture and abuse, eventually killing him. The details of the crime are horrifying. The two boys, Thompson and Venables, were tried in an adult court despite their young age. They were sentenced to life in prison. So what do you guys think about this video? Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications whenever new crime-related videos are posted. Moving on. Number 5. Willie Basket. Born in 1962, Basket was raised in Harlem, New York, in a family plagued by poverty, addiction, and violence. From a young age, Basket was exposed to drugs and crime and quickly became involved in a life of delinquency. In 1978, when he was 15 years old, Basket committed his first murder. Basket was eventually arrested and tried for the murders, and he was sentenced to 5 years in a youth detention center. However, while serving his sentence, Basket continued to act out, assaulting guards and other inmates and wreaking havoc wherever he went. In 1988, just months after being released from the detention center, Basket committed another murder. He shot and killed a man in a robbery gone wrong, and police quickly apprehended him. This time, the court system was less lenient, and Basket was sentenced to 82 years. Number 4. Lionel Tate. Lionel Tate was just 12 years old when he was charged with murder for the death of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick. The incident occurred in 1999 when Tate was babysitting Unick at her home in Florida. According to reports, Tate claimed he was imitating professional wrestling moves when he accidentally killed Unick. However, evidence later emerged that suggested Tate had beaten the young girl to death. Despite the seriousness of the charges against him, Tate's defense team argued that he was too young to understand the implications of his actions fully. They claimed that Tate had grown up watching violent wrestling matches on television and had no concept of the real-world consequences of the moves he was imitating, while others maintained that he should never have been charged as an adult in the first place. Number 3. Graham Young. The case of Graham Young, also known as the Teacup Poisoner, is a chilling tale of murder and deception that gripped the United Kingdom in the 1960s. Young was just 14 when he first began experimenting with poisons, mixing chemicals in his school laboratory and testing them on his classmates. As he grew older, Young's fascination with poisons only intensified, and he began poisoning members of his family and friends, often using tea or other drinks as his delivery method. Young's first known victim was his stepmother, who fell ill after drinking a cup of tea that Young had laced with antimony. He poisoned his father, sister, and several schoolmates, killing at least 3 people. Eventually, Young was caught. He initially pleaded not guilty, claiming he had no memory of committing the crimes due to a rare medical condition. However, he later confessed to the murders, stating that he had been motivated by a desire to test his intelligence limits and prove that he was more intelligent than the doctors and detectives investigating the case. Number 2. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold launched a deadly attack on their fellow students and teachers on April 20th, 1999. The two teenagers killed 13 people and injured more before turning their guns on themselves. The Columbine Massacre, as it came to be known, was one of the deadliest school shootings in American history, and it sent shockwaves throughout the country. In the aftermath of the attack, investigators discovered that Harris and Klebold had meticulously planned the shooting, stockpiling weapons and explosives for months leading up to the attack. After the shooting, there was much debate about how to hold Harris and Klebold accountable for their actions. Number 1. Joshua Phillips. In November 1998, 14-year-old Joshua Phillips murdered his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton, in Jacksonville, Florida. Phillips beat her to death with a baseball bat, hiding her body under his waterbed for 6 days. During the search for Maddie, Phillips played the part of a concerned neighbor and even joined the search party. However, when Maddie's body was finally discovered, police found evidence linking Phillips to the crime, including Maddie's blood on his sneakers and the baseball bat he used to kill her. Phillips was charged with first-degree murder and tried as an adult. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Phillips had killed Maddie in a rage after she entered his house and discovered that he had accidentally broken her bicycle. Despite his defense, Phillips was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without parole. And that marks the end of this video. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Flicks. Bye.